There's two sides to every coin. Then there's a conversation you can join. But I'm an old dog and there's new tricks. And some of my opinions you just can't fix. 'Cause I'm an old man yelling at the sky. I'ma shake my fists at the clouds and cry. Get off my lawn, you snowflake, before I have a meltdown, breakdown, shakedown. 'Cause this is my hometown, so back down, sports clown. It's all just a game, and it's the last down, let down, cowtown. I said it's all just a game. I give the touchdown, the rundown, the lowdown. 'Cause it's over the game, gonna crack down, and shut down, the sundown. I said it's all just a game.
Hi, kids. Welcome to the program. I was paying attention. Don't worry. They were all upset because I wasn't looking at the camera when we started, but I knew you were there. Thank you for being there, as you always have. My name is Rob. Welcome to this little broadcast extravaganza that we do on Mondays and Wednesdays here in the summer. Mondays and Fridays. No Wednesday show. That was the note I wrote for myself. Make sure you remind everybody, no show on Wednesday. Monday and Friday. We will return to 3 days a week coming up in the fall, assuming there is a fall. And I have no reason not to believe there won't be a fall, but holy crap, it's warm. Now, if you're somebody who consumes these podcasts non-linearly or whenever you want, me referencing the weather outside probably doesn't do you any good, really isn't a bonus. But holy cow, is it warm. Glad you could join us. As always, this is a inclusive program. Everybody's welcome here. We are allies indeed. We are broadcasting live from Treaty 7 Nation territory. Later on, in about 10 minutes or so, we're very excited that a newly minted Alberta Hockey Hall of Famer will join us on the program, Tim Hunter. Many reasons to get Tim on, and I have been looking for them. Or not looking for them. I've had them up my sleeve, but with the induction, it just seemed like it was the right time to do this. So very excited. Tim's going to join us. Once again, do want to take this opportunity to thank Craig Conroy of the Calgary Flames, general manager of the Calgary Flames, for agreeing to sit down with us for nearly 2 hours on Friday. I texted him. I said, thank you. You're an amazing guy. And he texted me back and he thanked me and he said, now everybody's expectation is that I do 2-hour interviews. So for that, I apologize to my media peer group who, my guess is the next person that gets to interview Craig, you get him for 5 minutes. That's it. That's all. That's not actually accurate. I know there's been a lot of feedback. Some of it you loved, some of it you didn't like, some of it, that's just why we do these. They're intended to create reaction. They're intended to create conversations. It was a different conversation for me because he is my friend and has been for a long time. We tried where we could to go to the places that needed to go to. I make no So I am not at all concerned about the style or the implications of the conversation. I enjoyed it thoroughly. It was, I've done a couple here since I've come back that Kelsey Snow, Craig Conroy, there's been a handful of them. Even David Leggs last Monday. We got to get into that at some point on this program. That one on the Commonwealth Games had some legs afterwards. Just a couple of notes for me. One, we talked to Craig about, I've been beating the drum for Carla McLeod. I think Carla McLeod's an excellent hockey coach and can be an excellent hockey coach for any team. We had Carla on. Carla has not been talked to by men's teams. And I think where we ended up with Craig, and I've said this all along, I think taking somebody and elevating them to the top spot to say that we have, diversity, equity, and inclusion is a mistake. I think where we need to focus our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts are in grassroots and building it up from there. With that said, I'm very excited about what I saw today from actually my alumni. The first team that I ever called on television was the Fort McMurray Oil Barons of the AJHL way back in the 90s. And they today, again, not the first to do it, but today Fort McMurray announcing that they have hired Sarah Diamond as an assistant coach. This is how we truly get diversity, inclusion, and equity. I made a big deal a couple weeks ago about Harner Ryan Singh passing the torch on the Stamps report and the Flames report that he was doing for CSEC. And that's important. Like, it was great that he did it, but we need to get more diverse new voices out there. I have long maintained that the most important person in sport in Calgary is Sandra Persina. That Sandra Persina has been getting the seat time, developing as a play-by-play and as a broadcaster the same way that I did, and was not being rushed or elevated because of, gender needs or anything like that. A friend of mine, Balvinder, Balv won the Executive Directors Award for Hockey Calgary. He's the president of Simons Valley. We need more diversity in the lower levels of sport that push up. So when I see Sarah Diamond getting a job in the AJHL, this is perfect. The next step is a female coach in the Western League, head coach. Nice that there were assistant coaches, and we have a few of those peppered through the American Hockey League. But we continue anyway. One of the conversations that we had with Craig was on that topic. I gather, because I'm busy doing the program, I guess. So I have the boys, Jack and RJ, monitor the comments. I gather the point when I asked Craig if he was allowed to say the word rebuild did resonate with some. And again, I'm hoping if you're a rebuild person, if you're adamant about a rebuild, then I asked the question and you got the answer, and you can take it and process it the way you want. I find the rebuild, I would love to do an entire show around rebuilds and not whether they're right, wrong, or indifferent, but around them, because I think they've become a crutch. I think when we don't like what we want a rebuild. I think Calgary, and I've said this before on the old program, I said it on this program, I think all of our cities, sports cities, there's subcultures, there's certain aspects of them. And since I got here back in 2003, I've been here for 20 years working in this market. There's something about Calgary that our first inclination is to fire a coach. First inclination. Up until 2008, when Huffnagel came in, there was a lot of turnover with the Stamps. Goes without saying that there's been a ton of turnover with the Calgary Flames. We've seen it with other teams. But I just think the subculture of the city that was the de facto drop back position for some. Anyway, I'd love to do a show on rebuilds, but I don't think it would be well received. I really don't. I think there's a certain segment of the population that has very little interest in the results of the games, is more interested in what could happen, what might happen, what should happen. And that's as valuable and as warranted and has credence like any other kind of fandom does. Blind faith fandom, where doesn't matter, this was the best 6-0 loss the team's ever had. That has value too. I have no problems with that, but I just don't know if a whole show on rebuild would accomplish much on the word rebuild or on the term rebuild. The Iginla stuff was, I think we went through that whole old boys club, and we saw it in Edmonton with McTavish and Kevin Lowe, and they brought in Gretzky, and it was real easy to throw rocks and stones from afar and say, "Oh, it's the old boys club." And there's been criticism here. Lanny McDonald, I think 20 years ago or so would have loved to have gotten involved with the organization. The organization didn't choose to go that way. But I think there's people, and Lanny's got a great relationship that has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the management side of things. This organization has, not necessarily had that at times, has had that at times with the Sutters, and now has this version of the Red Mile old boys club, if you will. But the stuff about Iginla and his enthusiasm and his engagement, I thought was really interesting too. So, if you haven't seen it, it's worthwhile checking it out. Proud of it. Glad we did it. Hope to do more like it. That's what we always want to do. Couple things before we get going here. Dallas re-signing Jim Nill, their general manager, 2-year extension. Of course, he was your GM of the year. I bring this up only because it allows me to mention my good friend, Perry Barazan, hockey legend, and the great story that he tells about breaking Jim Nill's jaw. So we'll have to get Perry back on. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe he did tell the story when Perry was on show number 2 with us. But it's one of my favorite hockey stories of all time. So I really look forward to that. But anyway, Jim Nill getting a 2-year extension. Tough loss last night for the Stampeders. I don't know if you've checked out Live from the 55 with Danny Austin. You should. Great breakdown of the week that was in the CFL. Great breakdown of what was an exciting game, but a loss. The Stamps fall to 2-4 on the season. Struggling a little bit at home. Ottawa now with back-to-back overtime wins against Winnipeg and now Calgary. There were things to be excited about, I think, from an offensive standpoint. Certainly, the go-ahead touchdown late in the fourth quarter was a great play. Well, I don't know how you're that wide open, but you are. But if I were to go out on a limb, I would suggest to you that Dave Dickinson probably none too happy with his defense right now, which has usually been a hallmark and a calling card. And that's why I mentioned Live from the 55. I'm not going to break it down as well as Danny can. Nobody can. But I think if you talk to those around the Stampeders, the expectation was, they jettisoned some veterans, and some accomplished veterans on the defensive side. They're going to be a bit younger, but that game was a good old fashioned CFL blowout last night. Couple other local stories. One, how about the Cavalry? How about our pal Marco Carducci, and how about our pal the gaffer, Tommy Wheeldon Jr. 5-1 over Vancouver FC. Not Pacific, but Vancouver FC. Cavalry now sit atop the table. They sit atop the table with 27 points. They are going in the right direction at the right time. Pacific is going in the opposite direction in the wrong time. But, for a club that struggled to get its first win, didn't lose, but struggled to get its first win out of the gate, the Cavalry have really found their form. And speaking of biases, of which I have a huge bias, who had a better weekend than the Calgary Surge? Nobody. On the court, off the court, 2 wins at home. They clinched a playoff spot in their inaugural season. Now it's a matter of whether or not they're going to get a playoff play-in game, which would be really exciting. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later in the show, but a really, really big weekend for Calgary sports. For the most part, it broke the way that you'd hope, not so much on the CFL side. RJ, our guest is here. Perfect. Let's do that. Let's not make him wait any longer. Of course, our guests are brought to you by Ski Seller Snowboard, skisellersnowboard.com. 76 years in Calgary. You would say born and raised in Calgary, which is something we will say about our next guest. 4 locations when it comes to skiboard and skiing season. None right now. They're all closed right now, but they'll open here very, very soon. But you can always shop online, skisellersnowboard.com. Very pleased to have join us here on the little podcast today, a man who had his name called last weekend in Canmore at the Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame. You cannot take that away from anybody. Hall of Famer, it's got a nice ring to it. Tim Hunter's kind enough to join us today. Tim, how are you, sir?
Rob, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm excellent. Favorite question, how'd you find out? How did you find out you were being inducted into the Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame?
Yeah, it's interesting. Peter Marr called me, and I was like, Peter Marr is calling me. It's really interesting. And we were just doing small talk and talking about the weather. And I was down in Mesa, Arizona, where we spend the winter. And I was saying, geez, Pete, I'm sorry, but it's like 70 degrees Fahrenheit here, and I know it's 30 below in Calgary. So anyways, he cut right to it, and it was pretty exciting. Very, very honored to get that call. And, I knew since last November, and they finally broke it in March. And, it was just a fun winter to be able to have that in my back pocket all winter, knowing that I was going to go into the Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame this July. So it's very special.
Tim, it's kind of like the old Monty Python sketch. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition, but were you expecting a call? I mean, was a Hall of Fame call ever something that you were, wondering about in the back of your mind?
Oh, no, not at all. I did, it's interesting when you spend your career playing as basically a fourth line guy, a leader, a grinder, a journeyman, and being able to extend my career in those capacities in other locations was great. And then to go on and to be able to turn that hockey career into a coaching career and have such a long coaching career. And it was very enjoyable. And I talked to Craig McTavish at the Hall of Fame induction. He said, Hunts, it's about time that more of you guys, the blue collar types, get the recognition you deserve, because the work you guys do, it never goes unnoticed to the players, but a lot of times it does to the fans and the media.
I love that for so many reasons. But there's another guy, right, that was, an excellent penalty killer, shot blocker. It comes from him from a level of credibility, but it's also something, don't you feel, that has really been a hallmark of the Flames alumni in many ways too, Tim? I think back to the old SO 3-on-3 that Colin and Perry did, and they were always trying to make sure that, the glue guys got recognized, that it was for everybody, not just the superstars.
Yeah, and I mentioned our Hall of Fame, our alumni at the Hall of Fame, and how Colin and Dana Merzin and Jamie McCowan and Jim Poplinski, those guys all laid the foundation. Theo Fleury, they've been here all these years, and I'm just moving back to Calgary after not living here for 30 years, and the work those guys have done, and yeah, the fans in Calgary sure embrace, everybody, right from myself being the proverbial fourth line guy. And obviously, our alumni, everyone asks me, how does an alumni work? You have 150 members, you have 9 guys from the Stanley Cup team live in Calgary. How does it work? I said, well, there's Lanny, and then there's the rest of us. And, Lanny, he gets out and pounds the pavement just like everybody else. He does the grunt work, making lunches, filling bags, and doing just the simplest tasks that we do when we do some of these volunteer things, and it's great. But you're right, Colin Patterson, Joel Otto, Dana Merzin, they weren't high profile guys, just putting their time in. And then we have so many other alumni guys that don't get a lot of recognition, but they all, at some point, you run into somebody among the 150 members that we have along the line at some event. And it's really cool that guys just take the call and are willing to come out and help. And that's a testament to what hockey players are all about. They understand that they wouldn't have a job if it wasn't for the fans. And it's sure nice to give back to the fans, because the fans in Calgary certainly appreciate what we do in the community.
When you're getting ready for last Sunday and you're collecting your thoughts, was it a difficult process? Was it difficult to synthesize your career and be on a stage at a Hall of Fame event? And, was that an easy thing, fun thing? Well, how did you find that part of it?
Well, it was interesting because they told us you only had 5 minutes to make your speech. And boy, that's 40 years of NHL hockey playing and growing up. I grew up in Calgary. So, from the time I was 5, so 56, 57 years of help. And I was in Hawaii in early April and late April, talked to a friend of mine. He's a very smart guy. He's written a lot of books. He's a NBC political analyst in San Francisco. And we were talking about my speech, and he said, "Tim, keep it simple. What does it mean to you to go in the Hall of Fame?" And I said, "Well, the help I've gotten, the community of people that I grew up with, helped me as a player, helped me in my coaching, and then family, my parents, and then my wife and my 2 daughters. So it's a sense of community that, you talk about, it takes a village to raise a child, or a community and a village to raise a child. But the same thing for a hockey player. And I had help right from the beginning, right up through to my first days with the Flames. And if I didn't have some of the key people that were quality people in the right positions, you just never know what happens. But it's somehow the luck just puts everything in place. And that's what I spoke about in my speech, was the help I had along the way.
So you said something that's really interesting. You're born in Calgary. You eventually play for your hometown team. But at the start of your NHL career, you were drafted by Atlanta. So you didn't know, or did you know at that time, it was a little early for them to be coming to Calgary, right?
Correct. So I was in that 79 draft, the draft as an 18-year-old. So I signed the contract, went to Atlanta, went to training camp, signed a contract. After training camp, went back, finished my last year junior in Seattle. But Cliff Fletcher came and seen me play one time, and he said that you're going to get a break because the NHL is expanding to 18-2 from 17-2. So they're adding another roster spot. So that's going to help you. And they really felt, and I played my whole career as a defenseman. I was drafted as a defenseman, but they were starting to kind of give me the key words that I would probably play in the NHL as a forward. So then I fast forward, after the season was over, my 19th year in Seattle, I went down to Atlanta to have knee surgery. And I was at David Poyle's after the knee surgery, and he said, "I want you to come over for lunch." So I left the hospital, went to his place for lunch, and then I was going to stay in a hotel and then fly out the next day. And he said, "I just got off the phone when I arrived." And he said, "Come on, sit down." And he said, "I just got off the phone. I have some great news for you." I said, "Oh, really? What's that?" He said, "The Atlanta Flames have been sold to a group in Calgary, and they're moving to Calgary." And I was at his house the day he got the call. And it was like so surreal. I said, "Wow." He says, "Tim, you're going to have a chance to play for your hometown." And the furthest thing I thought, Atlanta and Calgary, that's a long way for my parents, my parents or my friends, and when we'll ever get into Alberta, with Edmonton and Vancouver close by. And I was like, holy mackerel. And then to have that happen, wow. So special.
But as an 18 or 19-year-old, I mean, I remember what it was like for me. I had a little bit of wanderlust. I mean, looking back on it, it's a great thing. But at the time, it's like, was it ever like, I would have liked to see what the South was like? Or
yeah, yes and no. But I mean, no better place to feel comfortable than being at home.
True.
And growing up in Calgary, have so many friends, and being able to look out in the crowd. And, I played those first games in the old corral and played a little while in the corral, and then the Saddle Dome, and then started to settle in. And I used to have this great routine before the puck dropped during the anthem. If I wasn't starting, I would stand on the bench, and I knew where all my parents and everybody was sitting in the crowd that I knew. Not many, but and I would kind of stand and look, and I told them all that. So they all knew I was checking them out to see if they're in their seats and see, just kind of little nod. And they all knew, and they all were waiting for me to look around and turn to them before the puck dropped. And that kind of gave me comfort that,
sure,
my family, my friends were there to cheer me on, and I felt comfortable with that. So I think it's the best thing. I had a great childhood. I left when I was 15 to go and play in Fort St. John, so I didn't live in Calgary from 15 till 22 when I came back to play for the Flames. So I had my time away to wander around in Seattle and meet a bunch of nice people, and Kim, my wife. And so, yeah, I had my fill, I guess, if you call that wanting to,
sure. That makes sense.
See the world. Yeah.
And I just warn our listeners, our viewers, we're not doing this chronologically, but I will come back to your time with the Flames in the 80s. But when you retire, you went to, I believe, Quebec and Vancouver and San Jose, then you retire, and then you get into coaching. Were you coming back to Calgary at all, or because you said you just moved back to Calgary?
Yeah, good question. Well, I've always lived in where I've worked, and when you have kids, once they get into school, it's hard to pull them out. The hockey season ends in April, so September to April, pull them out and take them back to Calgary. And so we just lived where we worked. And, once I left Calgary, I sold my place, went to Quebec, and that was kind of a short year. By February, I was in Vancouver, renting a place there. And then we moved to Bellingham, Washington, and just commuted across the border. And we bought a place there, and we lived there for about 5 years. And then my last year, I played in San Jose, and we just rented there. And then right away, I got offers to coach both in San Jose and Washington. We chose Washington, and I moved to Washington. We bought a house in Maryland, Sabrina Park, lived there for 5 years. Girls went to school. It was fantastic. And then the opportunity came to go to San Jose, and my girls had swam in San Jose. They swam at the famous Santa Clara Swim Club, where Mark Spitz swam. And they were like so excited to go back to California, to the sun. So back to California we went, and 6 years there. And then when I went from San Jose to Toronto, we we just rented. And then I had a house in Seattle I had for about 30 years, and we moved into that in the summer, and just kind of hung our hat there until, we went back to Washington, and then we went to Moose Jaw. I lived in Moose Jaw for 6 years.
Yeah.
It was actually one of the longest places I ever did outside of Calgary. So then when we were fired in Moose Jaw, we sold, and I was looking to retire. I was turning 60 in September 2020, and Calgary was just like the perfect fit. From here, the Flames alumni, the Flames family, and all that, and so many friends from growing up. But I do tell my friends I moved back to Calgary for the summer, not the winter. But I'm here once a month in the winter. I come back. We don't leave till November. I'm back early April. So I get to see lots of hockey games and events that go on with the Flames or the Flames alumni. I come back and take part in those. And so at least see 3 or 4 games a month, if possible.
So how's your hometown changed? I mean, you left at 15, you come back at just north of 60. What's your observation of the city?
It's still very friendly, and people are outgoing. You can walk down the street and people have their heads up and they're smiling, they're looking in the eye. The Stampede is the real hallmark of Calgary. The whole city just comes totally open and welcoming, and a party, and everyone has fun, and the rodeo events and the breakfast, and it's just so cool to have. I've had last 3 friends come in for the Stampede all 3 years, and it's just fantastic. And these people, they're like, they've heard of it and they see it and they're going, OMG, this is amazing. What a city. And then, I mean, the growth is great. The inner city part of Calgary has grown so much. And then the border around Calgary, like Calgary goes forever. Spruce Meadows used to be a long way out of town. It's in town now.
I know.
Yeah. And so, I grew up in Acadia, and now that's inner city. I live in over by the Curry Barracks here.
Yep.
And that was military housing and hangars and old buildings, and now it's all communities, parks, restaurants. ATCO has a big headquarters. It's amazing the growth, but all cities are like that. But the real fabric of Calgary is friendly people. The fans, the hockey fans are fantastic. Going to the games, the people are knowledgeable. It's so a lot of that hasn't changed.
Since we're talking a little bit about real estate, more to do with the place you played junior and you owned a home. Thoughts on Seattle being in the NHL? Was that ever something that you'd ever thought about, as a junior player or even when you lived there?
I always thought it would be a great location because you have the natural rivalry with Vancouver so close. And I always thought Portland would get a team. And then California is not far away, in Calgary, Edmonton, everything's close. So, that when I played there, we played in the old Seattle Center Arena, and it was small, about 5,000. And then the Coliseum was there, but they had the Sonics, and the owner changed the outlay of the building, so it wasn't really hockey friendly. And we played some games in there, and it was a great building. It just wasn't quite big enough. And then when they, there's a lot of hockey history in Seattle. Goes back to the Seattle Totems, the Seattle Metropolitans, all way back. And some of those old guys that I, were instrumental in my junior. Don Ward played from Seattle, and then guys like Doug Messier and Tommy McVie playing in Portland, and that league, it was just an amazing hockey league. When you're Guy Fielder and all these guys, it's just incredible. And the Seattle hockey was big, and there's a lot of hockey fans. And now the culture they're creating, I have so many friends from that area, especially Bellingham, and the young people have grasped on to the game. They just love it. Like, road hockey is huge among young adults. These guys are out. So I have a friend in Bellingham, and he'd bring his boy Connor to hockey games in Vancouver and Calgary and different places. And once in a while we'd play an exhibition game down in Seattle, and I was always getting him autograph sticks. And he had this big pile of autograph sticks from all these guys. When I was with San Jose, if we were playing in Vancouver, they'd come up and watch the game, and Joe Thornton and Patty Marleau. And so he's got this big pile of hockey sticks. And he said, last winter, my son comes over and he goes, Dad, he's in his mid-30s. And he said, Dad, where's that pile of hockey sticks that Tim gave me, all those autograph sticks? He goes, well, they're in the corner in the garage. He goes, oh, great, I'm going to get them. We're going to play road hockey. He goes, you're going to take all those autograph sticks? He goes, yeah, they're just hanging out in the garage. We might as well use them. So he took them out. He handed them out to all his buddies. He had this big road hockey game on his street. 36, 35-year-old adults playing boys pickup hockey on the street. So
that's awesome.
That's Seattle. It's a huge culture of young people that go to the games. They split tickets, and what a great way to promote the game. And you're always trying to cultivate new fans, and the best place to start is with young people.
No kidding. I'm jumping around, but you mentioned two names. You mentioned Doug Messier and Tommy McVie, and I cannot say Tommy McVie without smiling. I just don't know what it is about that man. And I've talked to him, but I don't know him, but he's an incredible guy. Can you just talk a little bit about some of those influences and some of those guys and the impression that they left upon you?
Tommy was one of the biggest because he was old school, but he was very positive, and he was a real motivator. I tore my knee in February, my second year pro in Oklahoma City. And Tommy gave me the Gail Sayers book about his recovery from a knee injury, and very motivational book. And Tommy talked about, being positive and turning sour lemons into lemonade and all this stuff. And he would go around the room and I'd get there early and be in the dressing room, and Tommy's laying out quotes on the guys' stalls. And then at the end of the day, we're leaving, and Tommy comes in the locker room, and guys have just left it, or it's in the garbage. And I go, does that bother you, Tommy, that you pan this stuff out? And Guys throw it. He goes, all I'm trying to do is get to one guy. If I get to one guy, I've done my job. And he sure got to me because it was, and even years and years later, if I run into Tommy, he has something to say about that time when I played for him in Oklahoma City, or, somewhere along the line, he saw me play a game in the NHL and he had always had a nice thing to say about me. Great listener, and a guy that really paid attention. And it wasn't about him. It was about you, the young hockey player that Tommy was trying to make better and help get a chance to play in the NHL. And very thankful for guys like that, because they're the guys that make, they don't make guys like that anymore. Al Coates, very similar. And I talked about Al Coates in my speech. Al was a mentor before any coach or player teammate on the Flames. He just kind of, him and Al McNeil had the best jobs in hockey. Al McNeil might have had a better job because Al would go on the road every 2 weeks and you never knew where he went or what he did. So I always used to tease Al. I said, Al, when I retire, I want a job like yours because you're involved in management. You and Cliff and Coatsy, you guys are all molding this team. I said, but you go on the road and no one knows where you go and or really what you do. And I want a job like that when I retire. And Coatsy was very similar. Coatsy was in management, and Coatsy was around the team and traveled with us and was always around the team. And Coatsy, and today the teams don't have people like Al Coates, where somebody that's really got the beat on the day-to-day of the team. And that's not just the players. It's the players and their families.
Yeah.
It's the trainers and their families, and the whole thing, the coaches, the players, the trainers, that big group that travels together, that is kind of one big happy family. And it has to be if you want to be successful. And Coatsy had his finger on the pulse of that all the time. He would just grab guys, grab a guy or grab you and say, hey, Hunts, this and that, you've got to do this, and point you in the right direction. And be, you might have been giving you a little kick in the rear end or just a pat in the back, but he was always encouraging, and there was a positive out of it when you walked away from Coatsy. So, I don't have a lot of guys like that in hockey today that are paying attention. I see some of the things that went on with the Flames last year, for instance, and I just, there's a lot of guys around, but is somebody around all the time that's really paying attention to everything at all times? Because that's a tough job. And Al Coates, nobody did it better than Al Coates.
And I mean, I can attest to that because in the last decade or so, he's become a mentor for me, on boards, and I served on boards with him, and I've gotten to know him, and he's the same way today. I mean, you can't take it away from him, right? That's his nature. That's what he does.
Yeah. He's super detailed. A guy that they had a skeletal crowd office when they brought the team here from Atlanta, and getting everything set up and getting the tickets and getting the off-ice officials and getting everything in line to drop a puck for a hockey game. And so few people doing that. Like back in the day, June Yates, who was the Cliff's secretary, and man, the work that she did, and Brenda Koyach, who's still with the Flames.
She's retired.
She retired. Oh, geez.
I just found that out. I couldn't believe it.
Wow, I didn't know that. That must be just new. Mike Burke,
another guy. Berkey, right? Yeah.
Man, the work those guys did, and they still do. It's amazing. It's amazing, and good teams, and they don't run without quality people, and they sure had some quality people in those days.
A thought on Chopper? Like Al McNeil is the best kept secret in all of hockey. He should be in the Hall of Fame too, right?
Yeah. Yes. Al, same thing. Would come down to the bench, and before practice, I was always out there early. First on, last off, and that came from guys like Tom McVie and John Brophy, and Hunts.
There's another name. Wow.
That ice is free. You never have to pay for that ice. It's out there. Use it.
Yeah.
If you want to improve your game, be first on, be last off. When the coaches leave, that's when you can have some fun and work on things or try things you've never tried before, and no one's out there watching. It doesn't matter. it's not about winning or losing. It's about you improving. But Al would come down and go say, okay, after practice, I'd come down and he would chat with me and show me a few things about, he would see that it was slipping through the cracks at the coaches. He wouldn't go down and tell the coaches, hey, you got to tell Hunts to do this and, work on that. He would come down and he'd just point me, okay, you got to take pucks around the wall better. And you hear, fire pucks, or get somebody to fire pucks around the boards to you. And he says, what you're doing is you're looking at the puck. You got to check to see if you look at the defenseman first, then he knows that that you've paid attention where he's at. But if you go straight to the puck, he's going to pinch on you. You're never going to get that puck up. Little details. And that's what, again, guys like Al McNeil and Al Coates paid so much attention to. And it's invaluable.
Was he, and I don't know, maybe you weren't inclined, but the thing about Chopper that I've always appreciated is his connection to history. He knows Gordie Howe. He had Guy Lafleur. Like, it's incredible that he can sit there and tell you about the greats of the game from his own eyes. Like, that's valuable.
Yeah, no question. And just the stories on how those guys competed, how they competed, how hard and how tough they played. And, Al used to say, Hunts, sticks are a lot cheaper than teeth, so carry your stick up. Some guy's trying to run you from next week. You just let him know he's come through a Sherwood and might get a Sherwood tattoo in the forehead, and stuff like that. It's just like, and you kind of get the green light, like, I got to play a little tougher and protect yourself. You tell Al McGinnis that, or Fleury, like, get your stick up. Some guy's trying to run you over, and protect yourself. Little Gordie Howe elbow. Mm-hmm. It goes a long way. And if you don't protect yourself, who's gonna? And that, you want to have a long career, you better protect yourself, or you're going to become a new rink board advertisement.
So Tim, those guys, did they inspire you to pursue coaching post-career, or did they just bring it out and cultivate it in you? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm a little bit of both. Okay. I had a great roommate when I played for the Flames, Paul Baxter. And Paul Baxter, he was a very, very smart guy, and he got into coaching. He coached in San Jose. I had an offer to coach with Darryl Sutter, Paul Baxter, Roy Sommer, and I would have been the third assistant coach. And then in Washington, it was with Ron Wilson and Tim Army, and I was the second assistant coach. More money, more responsibility. But so Paul, he was a great mentor for me because he's a little older and he'd been around, and he was really tough, and he knew how that tough part of the game worked and how to use it to your advantage, and, all these different things. So, being in that position and having someone to look out for you. And Paul always, we were roommates. We did all kinds of different things. He said, Tim, he said, a lot of hockey players are like sheep. They just follow each other around. They all buy the same colored car. They all live in the same neighborhood. They all wear the same suits. They all go to the same tailor. He said, be Tim Hunter. You want to do something different, do something different. And don't just follow along. Be a leader. And I've always been that way. I've done things that, not many hockey players do, and they like to golf and they like to play hockey, and that's, I did all kinds of things. I have a pilot's license. I'm a fly fisherman. I go salmon fishing. I do all kinds of different things that not many hockey players do. And that's because I'm not a follower.
What was the transition to coaching like for you? Did you hook into it right away?
It was great because, you're 3 feet from the action. Mm-hmm. You're have a little bit of a input on the results, but you're out there. You're in the fight with the players. You're behind the bench. You're right there. I might have had too much to say early in my career because I was, some of the players, they weren't like, I was always vocal on the bench. Somebody was saying something to the bench, I'd tell them to go warm the bus up and beat it. And, I could stand up for what I said. When you're a coach, you're not accountable for what you say, but I think I had a little bit of right to say things because I lived it, and sometimes our players wouldn't. But coaching is the most rewarding thing. Is the exact same thing that happened to me, is having an effect on young players.
Mm-hmm.
You know, young players in Washington, Sergei Gonchar, Brendan Witt, all these young guys, Jan Bulis, Richard Zednik, Steve Konowalchuk. So much fun having an impact on the young players, the prospects coming in, being able to go in the summer and spend time with them at the gym and do all the testing with them. And then, you know, even later, going to San Jose and being around the development of they had one of the best development models in all of hockey.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Burke is just a genius when it comes to breaking down how to shoot a puck, how to take a puck around the boards, how to protect the puck, how to cycle, all these different things. We had manuals that we used to present to the kids. We'd get them up and make them present to us and see what they learned. And it was fantastic. Joe Pavelski was what a pupil at 18 years old, 19 years old. Joe was to learn and teach and watch. He was just a rink rat. He had a little device that he had made himself to help give himself passes so he could one-time the puck. It was amazing. He dreamt it up and brought it out in the ice, and he was showing us. I go, man, that's amazing. Just a young guy that wants to get better, tipping the pucks. Like, it was crazy. Like, you saw what he did with Dallas in the playoffs.
At 38, right?
At 38. This is 20 years ago that I had my hands on him as a prospect and being able to help him. So it was great. So, you know, all those things, you know, the young people, you have an effect on their lives. And, you know, then later on in my coaching career, to go to Moose Jaw and be around some great young individual hockey players like Graydon Point, Taryn Janot, Dryden Hunt, these guys just they're the sponges. Brett Howden, who, you know, just had a Stanley Cup at his house on Saturday night here in Oakbank, Manitoba.
Ron Wilson, tell me a little bit about the relationship, what he means to you, what he meant to you, and working with him.
Well, probably one of the longest serving assistant coaches for one guy. 15 years I coached with Ron. 14 seasons. The one season we had in San Jose was the lockout year. We didn't coach, but Ron was fantastic. Ron's a little different culture because Ron's an American. He's in the USA Hockey and all that. And, but Ron grew up in a real hockey family. Like, his dad and his uncle both played. His uncle Johnny played in Detroit. His dad Larry played a little bit in Detroit and then played in Chicago, and then got the proverbial send down to Buffalo for 2 weeks, and he spent 13 straight years there. But Ron, like, we'd go into Detroit and we'd go to the old Lindell AC. It was an old bar that served, you know, egg salad sandwiches and hot dogs and lots of beer. And we'd sit around with Ted Lindsay and Gordie Howe and Johnny Wilson and Alex Delvecchio. And I'd just sit at the table and listen to the stories about them riding the bus and the coaches and different things. It was just unbelievable. We'd go before the game. Johnny would come in, and maybe some of the alumni guys, Mickey Redmond, Gordie Howe, would stop in and say hello to Ron, because Ron was just a kid coming in the dressing room getting a Pepsi or something or a Coke back in the day at the old Olympia. And, you know, so it was pretty cool. And but the special thing about Ron was Ron said to me one day, he said, "Tim, don't coach the way other coaches coach, or you've been coached. Coach the way you think you should coach. So develop a style of what you think you should do." And he said, "Think of it in this terms. I want you to be an entrepreneur in your own position." He said, in my time in the NHL, starting in Vancouver, I was a player, and then Burke and Pat Quinn put Ron into Milwaukee as an assistant coach, and later on he came to Vancouver. And then I played for Ron when he was assistant coach in Vancouver. with Pat and Stan Smeal and Glenn Hanlon and Ron Smith. And, the video was really starting to really become a big thing. Obviously Roger Nielsen was doing, but more in depth than what Roger was doing. And by the time we got to Washington, we were digitizing game tape onto computers, CDs to players, and we had towers with games on. We could plug in and put the game on a laptop, and so we were the first guys to do that. We had a bench monitor in Washington, and the first time we had video on the bench. We were able to show the video to the power play guys. We used it in a positive way. Like Adam Oates say, well, when I fake here and go there, where does he put his stick? That's all I want to know. So I could get a seam across to Peter Bondra.
Yep.
So Ron's biggest thing was innovation. He said, you got to be an entrepreneur in your own position, and you got to innovate. I don't want drills from 2 years ago. I want new drills, and I want new things. I want new ideas. So we came up with we brainstormed with Pinnacle, which is XOs now, a guy called Doug Cole, to develop the right keys and everything to log the games, and then what interface to have it with, and then this bench monitor and all these other things just kept developing as we went through with Washington. Then when we took it to San Jose, we started taking it to another level with smart boards in the dressing room and everything. But that was the fun part of working with Ron Wilson. We did a lot of new things. We did a lot of new things with the players, like off ice things, taking them curling and doing all these different things for team building and what have you. And some of it was a little bit old school, but newer approaches to the game, and tried to keep the game fun and exciting for the players. Today the players have mandatory days off.
Yeah.
Well, that comes from Ron Wilson, and it actually comes from his dad, Larry. So Larry started coaching. He was coaching in the minors, and he would have a calendar for the whole month, and it would have practice times and days off. And this is back in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the families, these guys are in the minors, they don't make a lot of money. They, the wives, they got kids. Family time is really important. So they would know they'd play Friday, Saturday, Sunday was off. Right? And then you practice Monday or Monday, or they played Saturday, Sunday, and Monday was off. And he would never take it away from them. They lose or they acted up. You always had a day off. So when I started coaching with Ron, we would do that, the NHL. We'd give the players a monthly calendar. Here's what we're flying here. This is where we're and print it out, and we'd give it to them. And the players, they were like, wow, we get a day off. Like, these are 3 days off this month. There's 4 days off this month. They couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
But they loved it. And it was, now it's mandatory because the players just saw the value in that.
Sure.
And the value in, back in the day, the teams and the managers, they took advantage of the players because the players had no rights. They had no leverage. They didn't have a union like they have now, or a players association. So it's kind of cool. But Ron was a real innovator, and I was able to help with a lot of the stuff that he innovated or we innovated. Tim Army, the same. Tim is an incredible coach. He coached in Minnesota's organization for the last while in Iowa, and I think they just got a new coach there. Tim, I'm not sure what Tim's with. So much fun coaching with those two guys. And then we went to San Jose, and we had Rob Zettler. We joined Rob Zettler, and Rob's now in Tampa. He won a cup down there in Tampa, coaching the D. And but Ron, Ron had a stroke here a few years ago, and he's doing okay, but he can't function the way he used to, can't golf the way he used to, and all that. So, but the opportunity that he gave me, first-time coach, and let me, I played my whole career as a forward. I was drafted as a defenseman, And then I coached the defense in Washington for 5 years.
Right.
And, great respect with all those guys. It was easy to coach a veteran team of Mark Tenorti, Sylvain Cote, Kelly Johansson, Joe Reiki. And we had Don Shar and Witt in there as young guys, and Phil Housley. My first year in the NHL as a coach, I went to the Stanley Cup Finals. We lost to Detroit. I thought, oh, this is great, man. Like this, it's like when you're a player, you go early in your career, you think, oh, this is going to happen all the time.
What you mentioned that the connection, like you guys were together a long time. Did you have the opportunity to interview for your own head coaching gig? Was that?
I did. Yeah, I did. And but I wasn't. I think my term for it was there was always these guys that were climbers. They're always looking for the next best job and the next best thing. And I really, really enjoyed being assistant coach for Ron because he gave me so much responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
In Washington, I coached the D and I coached the penalty killing. And by the time I went to San Jose, I coached the forwards in San Jose because we gave Zetz the D because he was a defenseman. I coached the forwards and I ran the power play and the penalty killing. I did all the meetings, all the video, and like I never slept because I worked so much, but it was amazing. And then we went to Toronto. We moved the things around, but I still ran all the meetings and ran 1 year I ran the power play, next ran the penalty killing, then I ran the power play again. So it was fun because he gave me so much responsibility. And
right,
we laughed. Zetz and I laughed. The year we lost out in the conference finals in San Jose, we had the lowest goals against, best power play, best penalty killing, and we lost the conference final. And what does that get you? Doesn't get you a return to San Jose. They didn't renew us, so we went to Toronto after that. But Toronto, San Jose was under different ownership at that time, and it was a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
When I went to San Jose, they had no digital video. They had a VHS to VHS, a double VHS machine and a little TV. And we had just come from digital video with smart boards in Washington. We're kind of going, oh, this is a little antiquated. And they didn't have a video coach. So I had to do all the video stuff myself. And it was so there at that time, San Jose Sharks were the only team in the NHL that didn't have a video coach.
In Silicon Valley.
In Silicon Valley. I said to one of the people in management, I said, this building is called the HP Pavilion. Do you think we can get some HP computers? And he said, yeah, I think that's possible. I said, well, that'd be a good idea because we could use some. And we slowly got them up to speed. And by the time we left, it was state of the art. And I trained a young guy. He's the video coach for Colorado now.
Mm-hmm.
And he stayed after we left San Jose, he stayed with Todd McClellan. And then after Todd left, they fired him. And then I helped get him a job in Colorado. And they just won the Stanley Cup a year ago in Colorado. So pretty cool for a young guy. He was 19. And then at 38, he finally wins the Stanley Cup.
Oh, that is awesome. Let me ask you a couple of questions about your experience in San Jose and then Toronto, but what was 2004 like? What was the Western Conference final like, the Red Mile version from your standpoint, coming home, your hometown in that environment?
It was amazing. I was just like, wow, what a job. I know the Flames had been in trouble and they had to revive the Flames and all these Flames ambassadors and all this stuff. And I was like, oh boy, what a scene that all the red sweaters in the building. And yeah, it was fantastic. It was really something. It was really special to see. I was really glad to see it. It was fun to play in the Saddledome.
Toronto, a lot of opinions on Toronto. You coached there, you were there. What was your experience like in the Maple Leafs?
Well, it's really amazing I grew up in the 60s in Calgary, and we got the Maple Leaf games and
Mm-hmm.
Saturday night hockey nights. So watch the Maple Leafs a lot, and had great teams. And 6 and 7 years old, they're winning their last Stanley Cups, and it was I was very proud to be able to wear a Maple Leaf logo on my tracksuit. And I remember Brian Burke first came from Anaheim, and he came in and he was going to work out, and he pulling on his first time pulling on a Leaf track pair of shorts and a Leaf shirt to go and ride the bike. And I said, it feels pretty special having that logo on you, doesn't it, Berkey? He goes, it sure does. And he says, I've never thought about it that way. He said, but it's pretty cool. I mean, we're not players, but we're working for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and that's such a storied franchise. And I remember asking, Keith Acton was there, and I asked Woody, I said, so what's it like? Like, what's the media and the fans like? And he said, well, let me explain it to you this way. So wherever you live, you're going to have your favorite place. You're going to stop in and get your coffee in the morning and donut or whatever you do, muffin, and then you're going to go down to the rink. And so and if things are going okay, it's going to be fine. He says, the moment the team starts to flounder, you're going in to get your coffee, you're going to get the Spanish Inquisition on, okay, what's wrong with the team? Yeah. What's wrong with Tosco? What's this? Why doesn't Burke? Why doesn't Cliff? What's Wilson doing? And it was exactly like that. I went one time to get it, and we were a month into the season. I went to get a haircut just outside of the Air Canada, under the -15 the underground mall. So I go in there, and there's this guy, Luigi's hair barber, and he's standing outside, and he recognized me. Oh, Mr. Hunter, can I help you? I said, yeah, I just want a haircut. He go in the back and see so and so. Okay, I go back in the chair. How can I do? I tell him what I want. I'm not sitting there 3 or 4 minutes. He starts asking me, what's wrong with the power play? And what's wrong with this? What's wrong with that? I'm like, I said, excuse me, I came here for a haircut, not for you to grill me on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Can you give me a little bit of respect? I just want to relax and get a haircut.
Yeah.
And so I'm leaving, and Luigi says, what? How was that? It was good. Do you enjoy? I said, no. I said, I'll never be back. I said, I come here for a haircut. It was like bombarded with Leaf questions on what was wrong with the team, not anything positive. It was all negative. I said, so I'm not coming back. You go, oh, sorry. I was like, wow, it's can be overwhelming. And
sure.
You watch the players, and they're not standing in front of 2 or 3 TV cameras. There's 15 TV cameras.
Yep.
There's 30 people in front of you, and you're pinned against the wall or in your locker. And it's like, and and I remember Ron was coaching the Olympics,
mm-hmm.
and Vancouver, and so Rob and I were running the team, and Woody, and so I was acting kind of head coach, and I was doing all the media stuff. I was like, OMG, looking out and looking at this crowd of media personality, and some guys that, there's lots of guys that you really respect. They've been in it a long time. And there's a few guys in that crowd that you're kind of going, really? I have to deal with you again? Some of these guys that were in Calgary back in the day, and now they're in Toronto.
Oh, I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah. So it was something. And I think that a lot of the players, it grates on them. The pressure. Like, we had lots of pressure in Calgary to win. Everyone a game day against the Oilers are like, big game, Oilers, it's going to be, we're looking forward to it, and, this and that. So everywhere you went, at least the 3 or 4 days, or the day of the game, the day before an Oiler game,
mm-hmm.
It was like people were just bombarding you. But it was good stuff. And even if you lost, people were happy because there was probably 2 or 3 fights and something. The game took about 25% longer than it should have, because all the other shenanigans that went on with it. So people were generally happy.
Yeah.
But in Toronto, it grates on those players and the coaches and the, you can't get away from it. You can't get away from the history. They haven't won a Stanley Cup since 1967. And, everyone has an opinion. No matter where you go in hockey as a coach or a player, the community has opinion. You're going to run into people with opinion. But I think it's overwhelming there. I think that's a very, very big problem for people to function and do their job there.
In 2014, you end up in Moose Jaw. You were last in Washington, but you end up in Moose Jaw. By design, did it work out that way? I mean, you wouldn't be the first NHL coach. I mean, Rico did it. John Paddock has done it. Was that a plan?
Yes. I wanted to have one shot at maybe being a head coach in the NHL. And I thought I had because every time I interview, I had no head coaching experience.
Gotcha.
You don't have any head coaching experience. So I thought, well, I'm going to get some head coaching experience. And I thought, and I said, I'm 54. I'm going to be 60. I want to retire by the time I'm at least 60 or 61. That was my goal. I'll give it 4 to 6 years. We'll see how it goes. And it went great. Went through the cycle in Moose Jaw. I'd signed a 3-year contract. We made the playoffs. We had success, and then signed another 3-year contract. And, it's a community-owned team. They weren't going to sign me to another contract past that. I had made the most they'd ever paid a head coach in Moose Jaw, and where the cycle was really dropping off. And as it turned out, it was the luckiest thing for me to get fired in January and COVID hit in March, because I didn't have to deal with all that. I went to Arizona for the next 3 winters. I didn't have to deal with the Moose Jaw and the whole thing. So great time there. Met some wonderful people. I had a great opportunity to run the team and implement a culture that I believed in. And we fell short. We had a great team. We won the Scotty Monroe Trophy, the regular season championship, and just couldn't get past Swift Current in the playoffs. We had our team was a draft and develop team, made a few changes, a few additions, but right at the deadline, these other teams, they added players to beat us.
Yeah.
And they did. They beat us up and physically, and we just couldn't get the job done. We had a great team, but it was fun. I had the opportunity. I coached the U18 World Championships. I coached in 3 World Juniors. I won a silver, a gold, and a bronze for Hockey Canada. Won the regular season title. I had as many wins in the 6 years I was in Moose Jaw. Well, the 5.5 years I had in Moose Jaw as Kelly McCrimmon had in Brandon, and he's one of the best coaches of all time in the WHL. So, those kind of things are I was had a winning atmosphere, a winning environment, a winning team, and developed a lot of great young men from young boys coming in as 15, 16-year-old boys into that program, and them leaving as 19 and 20-year-old men. And that's so rewarding. And then all the relationships I have with the guys like Point, Howden, Dryden Hunt, Tanner Janot, down the line, it's fantastic. And that's the rewarding part. And I live in Mesa in a community with probably 10 or 12 couples from Moose Jaw that I met when I coached there. So it's fun. We golf every Tuesday and Thursday. We have a group of 32 we golf with, and it's and there's only about 8 of us from Alberta, and the rest are from Moose Jaw.
You've used the term retired a couple of times. Is it capital R retired or small r retired?
Well, I do say this: I would only ever work again if it was in the NHL. And I have an agent. And he throws my name around now and again, but I'm not actively seeking a job. I know I have lots to offer. I still know I could have an effect on an NHL team. I follow the game. I'm a big student of the game. I follow the Flames. I know what makes a team win. The game changes all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And if you aren't up to the speed of the changes in the game, you're never going to be successful. And you can't be the worst thing to do is be a copycat, because everyone else is doing the same thing. If you could be an innovator and a leader in hockey, then you're everyone's chasing you.
A couple more for you, Tim. I mentioned right off the bat that we would go back to the 80s. You were kind enough to join me on the radio show when Dave Semenko passed, and we had just a lovely conversation about him. How often do you sign that one picture of you and him looking at each other?
Well, back probably when in the late mid 90s, kind of just around when I started to retire, it really, like, Jack Cookson from Pro-Am Sports in Edmonton bought the negative and the rights to all those photos from Bob Mummery, I believe, and approached me with doing that. And he'd bring a stack down to Calgary. I would sign a stack, and they were either signed by Dave or my stack signed by Tim was going up and Dave was signing. We ran into each other along the way at some rinks when I was coaching, and he was working for the Oilers as a pro scout, or when I was development coach for the Capitals when we didn't get renewed in 2001. So I, built a little bit of relationship with him, and he used to laugh, and he's a really, really funny guy, and he is so loved by his teammates, Wayne Gretzky and Mark Messier and Kevin Lowe, all those guys, Glenn, they just loved Sammy. And so I think I told you this story at the time. It's it's kind of funny because that photo sold. Jack sold more of that photo of Dave and I, and we're not even fighting, than any photo of Wayne Gretzky or Mark Messier or any of those guys for probably 15 years.
Yeah.
It was the biggest selling sport photo in definitely Western Canada, if not all of Canada. That Battle of Alberta picture, and every charity event you saw them, and it was fantastic. And it just kind of everyone thought that Dave and I fought so many times. We only fought 4 times.
I know, that's the part that you blew my mind.
Yeah,
blew my mind.
Nobody really wanted to fight. Dave only fought about 60 times in his whole career. No one really wanted to fight him. He was so big and mean, and
he was mean, right?
He was nasty. He was really dirty too. Like Dave kicked me. He sucker punched me. He kneed me. He did everything. It's like no code there. But hey, Dave was doing his job, and that was the way it was. So you better be prepared. Sometimes, you're fighting a guy, you can't say, hey, don't kick me or don't knee me, or if you're not paying attention and he pops you one and you're not ready for it, well, it's your own fault. But there's lots of times I was like, man, I could see why Dave doesn't fight much. No one.
No.
And those guys got a little bit a little taller, a little braver, the Oilers, because they had him around. They had him and Marty in it. So at one time we're signing an autograph. Jack asked me to come to Edmonton to sign my side of the picture, and he says, I want you and Sammy to sit beside each other and be able to personalize them to people at a card show. And he says, yeah, I know why. I sent them all down and up. He says, let's do it this way. Do you mind? I said, no. I said, I think it'll be fun. So we sat beside each other, and we had a little break, and I said to him, who would ever thought you and I were going to be business partners? He thought it was great. He goes, yeah, Sammy and Timmy.
But you say about how popular that picture was, but that was the encapsulment of the Battle of Alberta, right? And it has been then used as the bar for all other rivalries, and that's almost impossible to reach.
Yeah, and it's the game has changed so much in a lot of good ways, and in some ways it's not as hard, it's not as physical, but I think for the majority it's for the better. Those games still were they were a track meet, because Edmonton had one of the fastest teams, and so did we.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they were exciting games, like to be part of, and you know, but everyone knew there was going to be, you know, there was going to be some bloodshed somewhere along the line. There was going to be somebody, you know, something go on, and because it was just such a heated rivalry, and one team was better and the other team was trying to gain ground, and eventually we would caught up and became as good. But you know, our time kind of ran out is what really happened, and we didn't have the luck in some ways, but it was fantastic. You know, like one referee, so it's a, you know, different era.
Yeah, there's a great point.
You could get away with a lot more in those days.
No war room, right?
Yeah, no, you know, cameras and different things that, you know, I'm not saying that. I mean, the biggest thing is like human nature. People will do what they can manage to get away with, right? And hockey players are very smart when it comes to that. They push the limits until it's like, and it's, you know, in my position, it was always to try to ride that fence where I was playing really mean, tough hockey without going over and costing your team. And it took a while to finally to learn that, where you could ride that fence and be right on that cusp of totally being a pain in the ass to the other team and doing your job and being effective without costing your own team. And that's an art.
Yeah. And that's a great way of putting it. That is a really good way of putting it. Just a couple more for you. One, now as a newly inducted Hall of Fame member, you have an interesting perspective. Your thoughts on Mike Vernon having his name called by the Hockey Hall of Fame?
Yeah, just an amazing career. And just, we were talking about it the other day. We have some mutual friend, and you know, Mike played 4 or 5 years after I retired, and extended his career in Detroit and San Jose, and the numbers for, and the size of Mike Vernon, compared to Patrick Roy. But you know, I know some guys that grew up. Mike's a little younger than me, but grew up and played with Mike Vernon, Pee Wee, Tiny Mike Bantam, and he was unbelievable then.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, he's not unlike, a little bit like the Wolf kid that here with the Wranglers and the Flames organization. You know, smaller statue guy, but like lights out stopping the puck. And
battlers.
Pardon?
Battlers.
Yes, battlers. Right. That's exactly what Mike Vernon was. He sprawling and have such a mentor in Glenn Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And Glenn was every bit of a goalie like Mike Vernon is, or Mike was of Glenn Hall, because Glenn was that hybrid style, stand up, butterfly, whatever it took to stop a puck, Glenn would do, and with no mask on.
Yeah.
And about the same size as Vernie. But yeah, just his numbers to win 2 Stanley Cups, and the wins, the goals against, the save percentages, and you know, I would you know, just me individually, I would have liked, personally, I'd like to see Mike go in with, you know, instead of going with 2 other goalies, to go in kind of as a goalie.
Yeah.
Because they really neglected or negated to bring these guys in. And finally this year, there's 3 of them at one time. I would have liked to see Mike go in with just a group and be one of the only goalies going, because I felt he was deserving of something like that. You know, Tom Barrasso is the same vintage as Vernie, very close. So, and every bit the same accolades with the Stanley Cups, and so. But it's great. It's great for Vernie, great for the Flames organization. You know, we're slowly catching the Oilers with a number of Hall of Famers from the 80s. I think we'll probably get another one someday soon. So I'd like to see Theo get in one day. I think he's deserving of it, but we'll see.
And then I have to ask you, because it's one of my favorite obscure little statistical notes, that the first Finnish-born goalie ever to win a game in the playoffs, Mika Kiprusoff, but he didn't do it with Calgary. did it with San Jose. He's going to be honored this year. I mean, for his work with the Flames, obviously, but you saw him as a young goalie, and you guys were deep with Nabokov and Toskala and Kiprasov. But any young Mika Kiprasov memories?
Really competitive guy, and I was assistant coach in San Jose, and we had we went in right behind Daryl Sutter into San Jose. Daryl got fired, and we took over for Daryl, and so we had inherited that team, and they had Nabokov. He sat out with a contract dispute early in the year, so Kiprasov and Toskala were playing, and then Nabokov came back by the time we got there, and so we had 3 goalies. So it was Warren Stroilo, with the famous goalie coach. He was fantastic, and Wayne Thomas as well, like just brilliant goalie coaches, and just all the great goalies that San Jose had, and by that time now, it's hard to manage to keep 3 guys happy because they're all pretty darn good.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, in hindsight, I think they let the wrong guy go, but that's hindsight.
Mm-hmm.
But Daryl being right in there and knowing the value and seeing him day to day in practice and watching Warren and Wayne work with him, he knew what he was getting, and getting here in Calgary. And I was, so I worked with Warren and Wayne to help satisfy the goalies with some shots from the forwards, because I was helping with the forwards, and so I had to get the young guys and do shots. And Kipper was getting a little antsy, and because out of my kind of knowledge, I think they were going to move him and keep Toskala and Nabokov, and I think Kipper was getting unhappy, and it was hard to manage in practice to keep a guy happy. And you hate to see, kind of one guy sour, and you have a happy group of players, and you got harmony, but you have one guy that's not happy. And I think they did the best thing and found him a job. And, it was disappointing to see years later that we had to compete against the Flames with him in that, because we all knew he was very good. And so seeing him as a young guy in San Jose, and then see him develop here in Calgary, this is fantastic to see. And he's a guy that's, you like to see guys win Stanley Cups, because that kind of is a bit of a hallmark thing to get in the Hockey Hall of Fame. But he sure has some numbers and credibility to be a Hall of Famer in his career. Kiprasov, he's and just a super, super guy, just a great teammate, great guy. You see the love by his teammates, and the love by the guys in San Jose when he got traded. We had a good team, and but it's and again, another great thing for the Flames organization.
This has been a lot of fun. I'd be remiss if I let you go without throwing these up here, and you mentioned it a couple of times, but boy, I was envious last week on your Twitter account. You've been out fishing. Tell me a little bit about the fly fishing, which I've dabbled in. It's incredible. There's nothing like it. And you're in the Mecca now. You're back home in the Mecca of fly fishing, really.
Yeah, and I talked earlier about having lots of friends here. My daughter and her boyfriend were here for the Hall of Fame induction, and my other daughter as well. And she said, "Dad, would you be able to take us fly fishing while we're there?" And I said, and I just happened to be at a Stampede breakfast of an old friend, and another old friend was there. We were in grade 1 together. So Doug Mackay, we're talking to fly fishing, and he says, "We got to do a trip. Let's get a trip and get some of our old buddies, and we'll go out." And he said, "I got some great spots south of town. We can go down to Fernie and the Elk River, or we can go to the Livingston River, or we could go on the Old Man River." He said, "But I can put us on some great fish." And so I remember my daughter wanted to go, and so I said, "Doug, would you be willing to show me how to get into one of these rivers so we can spend the day and fish a little walk wade? It's going to be hot. Just want to be able to just toss the line in to be able to catch something." And man, Doug put us on some fantastic Western cutthroat.
Oh,
And it was the water was a little low, but
yeah.
I caught the fish that I have in my hand there was my daughter caught that. She got the reel wound up wrong and she had a hard time bringing it in. So I had to kind of bring it in just by hand stripping the line back.
Yep.
And brought that fish that you're showing there in. I don't like to take them out of the water, but she really wanted a picture of it. And that was a monster cutthroat. And I had caught that fish and I couldn't get it in. And it because the barbless hook, it kind of popped it out. And I said, well, honey, you just stay and you hang out in that hole. That fish in a few minutes will be back on the line. And she caught, so I was down the stream, so I had to come up and net and everything for her, and we landed it. And but she caught that fish, so it was pretty special. And that's the beauty of Alberta, it's fantastic. And there's some more spots we're going to hit, and it's pretty cool. And actually we dropped into this little parking area, get out of our vehicles, we're getting the rods and everything all set up, and here this other truck pulls in. We're going, we got company. Thought we had this little spot to ourselves, and it's another guy I grew up with. He lived like 2 streets from me. Him and a friend were there fishing, so it was like old home week. And that has been the beauty of being back in Calgary. And that's
amazing.
You can't beat that. It's unbelievable.
Thank you. I was so excited for you when you got the honor, but to spend some time with you and to reflect on it, it's been a huge pleasure. And it gives me another opportunity, which is to personally thank you. You were such a huge volunteer for Superheroes last year and coming out and being with the kids and the parents, and they love you, and your dedication to that program was amazing. So I just want to thank you for that too. To get to know you has been a real pleasure, and just to be able to spend some time with you today has been a huge honor. So thank you, Tim. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot, Rob. You do the same. I mean, you pound the pavement. You do more work in the community than probably anybody. So you're a leader in that way.
Well, you guys showed, that's just the Flames way, right? Like that's what, if you're with the Flames organization, that's what the expectation is.
Yeah, well, that's the Calgary way, because Calgary's very, they give back, all Calgarians do. And it's wonderful to be in this community.
Agreed. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate
all right,
this.
Rob, have a great day.
Tim Hunter, everybody, 2023 Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame inductee. I don't know what do we do on Friday now? What the hell do we do on Friday now? 2 hours with Conroy. We just spent an hour and a half with another great one. This is amazing. By the way, Tim Hunter, brought to you by Ski Cellar Snowboard, skicellarsnowboard.com. 76 years in Calgary. 76 years in Calgary. And I know it's a bazillion degrees out today, but the winter is coming. We can almost guarantee that. That means snowboarding and skiing. SkiCellarSnowboard.com. So a couple things before we go with Final Mile here. Let's do do we have the video? I got to show this. I don't know if you guys saw this. I heard, so I don't know if we can play the music. Can we mute that? I'm not sure we have the rights to that. This is what the FIBA basketball women's championships is being played on right now. It's a complete video screen. The floor is a video screen. Now, I go back a decade or so ago, and I was told that you could get video on turf, that there was technology, a decade ago that you could put it a football field in and have it do this. But I finally saw this. And, I will bring it up with the Surge and the CEBL, but I can't imagine the investment. But just think about the things you could do there. Unbelievable. So, RJ, thanks for playing that. Also, our buddy from the Barn Burner, Ryan's running a contest today. It runs till the end of the day. He's got 2 courtside for this final home game of the regular season against the Edmonton Stingers on Wednesday for the Surge. 2 T-shirts, 2 hats. He's looking for people to tag the person that they would take to the game. They're going to make the draw at the end of the day. I just Ryan has been a huge supporter of the Surge, and he's out at almost every game. So I just wanted to make sure that we give that a little bit of love too. So if you haven't been out to a Surge game, here's a great way. So check out Ryan's Twitter account. I'm sure it's on his other social, but this is where we stole it from. And make sure you check that one out and get involved. Tag somebody in that. So you kids know what I'm saying. It's now it's got a new name. It's not even Twitter anymore. It's X. So go to X and tag Ryan or somebody. You know what I'm saying. Want to call BS? Want to call Royal BS? Last Monday we had David Legg on, and David Legg was talking about Commonwealth Games 2030, and lo and behold, within an hour of that interview, news broke. One, that 2026 Commonwealth Games are now somewhat in trouble in Australia, that the host committee had backed out. That is a political nightmare in Australia, so I'll leave that one alone. I don't think that's the one I'm talking about. Where I'm calling BS is on the province. Within an hour of us dropping the podcast, the province came out and said, hey, we're going to put in a new law that says, if we're going to spend money on international games, it's got to go to a referendum. That's crap. That's crap. That's cowardice is what that is. It is. The next day, the very next day, significant changes were made to our healthcare system. But nobody ever talks about, well, if we're going to make significant changes to the healthcare system, maybe we should put that to a referendum. No. The key about referendums are generally they get rid of problems that you don't want to face. You are an elected official, face it. But what you don't want to do is be an elected official and have to then say, well, we gave money to this or we gave money to that. Let me reiterate what I said last week. Look at Edmonton. Look at Commonwealth Stadium. Commonwealth Stadium, built for the 1978 games. It was a 44,000 plus. It's been expanded upon that. It's been expanded. It's where concerts go. It's where international soccer goes. It's where international track and field goes. Yes, the Elks are terrible and horrible and haven't won in 2 years. But as I said to our friend David Legg last winter, December 10th, as a matter of fact, I'm driving in Edmonton at 10 o'clock at night, and there in the middle of Commonwealth Stadium is a snowboard jump, and they repurposed it. It's cowardice. Disingenuous when governments say we're going to go to a referendum. Either you believe in the power of sport and the plans put in place will empower your city, make your community better, give you facilities that are a lasting legacy. Nope, we're going to put it to a referendum. Listen, this is a shot at all of us. We are a society now that absolutely prefers self-gratification over greater good. I want to be happy. I want this. I need this. We need the facilities. We need the infrastructure. We need to have dreamers. I have no axe to grind against the individual that made the minister that made it. I have no axe to grind on individuals. I have an axe to grind on policy. This is a cowardice. When you single up, and then they took a victory lap. I was going to play that video, and I'm like, no, you know what? There's some really good people in the sector, in the youth sector and the sports sector. And listen, I'm connected to Kids Sport. Kids Sport's a benefactor out of this. They're getting money from the government this year. I get that. I support that. I support tourism. But then don't say, oh, we're going to be transparent to Albertans. No, you're not. No, you're not. You want to be transparent to Albertans, then let's have a conversation about why we were talking about provincial police force. Where was the transparency there? Or the war room. Where's the transparency there? Or. We vote you in. You make the hard decisions. Don't throw it back at us. Don't throw it back. And it's just a simple way of killing it. It's a simple way of killing it. Okay, let's end on a positive. Calgary Surge, we mentioned this before, the Calgary Surge have clinched a playoff spot in their inaugural year. Just trying to find out now. They'll play Edmonton on Wednesday at home at 8 o'clock. By the way, TSN. And then they're on the road to finish off the season in Saskatoon against the Rattlers. Hoping to get a home playoff game. That's still to be determined. I just want to tip my hat. And I sent this tweet out to the staff, and I'm biased. I worked there. I'm building out the community programming. But in 48 hours, we had 2 home wins. We had our first ever camp, and we were at the Center for Newcomers supporting a 3-on-3 youth basketball tournament. Who had a better 48 hours than us? It's the staff. It's the young people. It's the managers, Brittany and Dylan. There's some, I can go on and on about names, but I'm really, really proud of this organization. And I'm really, really proud when I see somebody at a Surge game and they go, Rob, this is incredible. I have nothing to do with it. Please understand. Nothing to do with game operations, nothing to do with the music, which I love. I've been trying to get this kind of music for years. I love it. It's fun. It's all of that. Nothing to do with me, but I love it. So congratulations to everybody. Well, that'll do it. Oh, no, it won't. August 4th. Did I mention this? We're going to do a different show. We're going to do a completely, because this is not the same medium as I'm used to. I got flexibility in this medium, so I'm planning on taking it. August 4th, I'm putting together a volunteering show. We're going to bring in 4, 5, 6 different groups that need volunteers. Why? Because I get this question all the time. People tweet me, people ask me, people text. So the beauty about a podcast is I'm not interrupting anything. My show, my rules. So I'm going to bring 4 or 5 different groups in that need volunteers. And you're going to hear from them. They're going to state their case, and they're going to give you the information. If you've got a young person in your life, if you're a college or university student that's looking for something, if you're an older person that's looking for something, listen to that show. And what I'm going to do, RJ and Jack don't know this, but I'm going to get them to break up all the interviews separately so that we can share them, so all the groups can share them. But the whole intent there is if you're looking to stay busy, if you're looking to give back, if you're looking for a unique opportunity, we're going to have 5 or 6 on August 4th. So that's coming up. Thanks to RJ, who soloed this one today. He managed to land the plane. There was some buzzing. I don't know what that was about, but we'll get to that. Jack did it. Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead, RJ. You deserve an opportunity. Yeah. What was it?
He had the headphone mic, Mr. Hunter, and it was rubbing on his shirt.
That's what it was?
Yeah.
Oh, so we're blaming the guest.
As the guy in charge of the audio, I'm going to blame the out of studio guest.
Unbelievable. All right. Thanks to RJ. Thanks to Jack. Thanks to you. We're back on Friday with God knows what. I don't know. It's potpourri, perhaps. But make sure you tune in. Make sure you're watching and watching and downloading the podcast of Live from 55. Is it staging this week for Barnburner? What's Barnburner?
Yeah, Matt Stajan.
Matt Stajan, 3-parter with Matt Stajan on Barnburner. And for some reason, Ryan Pike won't go home. So if you go to Flames Nation, there's new Flames content there all the time. I don't know how they do it. I don't know why they do it, but I don't know how they do it. But here there's brand new content in the summer. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks to Tim Hunter. Thanks to you. Talk soon.